how to tell when someone is holding back in a discussion. Have you ever had a conversation where everything seemed fine on the surface, but deep down you knew something was off? They're agreeing but not engaging. They're responding to you, but they're not adding anything to the conversation. So this is your intuition kicking in, but intuition alone isn't a reliable source. The question then becomes, how do we systematically flag the body language cues that allow us to spot every single time this happens? My name's Jack. I specialize in nonverbal communication, so how to read people, influence outcomes, and regain control in high stakes conversations. In this video, you'll learn the most reliable body language signals to look out for that indicate when someone's holding back, why they do this, and how you can respond without creating pressure or resistance. Boom. So what actually is holding back? Intentional restraint of thoughts, emotions, or intent. Now, don't get it twisted. Holding back is different to hesitance. Hesitance is a state of processing. Holding back is point blank suppression. The person knows what they're thinking, but they're choosing to hold it back. So just to reiterate, thoughts, emotions, or intent. So let's move on to how holding back actually shows up in the human body. Right off the bat, restrained hands. When people want to express something but don't feel safe doing so, the body locks down and the hands are one of the first places to do that. I've seen this a lot in meetings where people agree verbally, but under the table, their hands are clenched firmly. So this isn't comfort, this is containment. So fingers interlocked generally without context or considering the baseline, just individually is considered a negative body language trait. However, hands clasped together is a little bit different. There's many reasons why we do this. You know, I'm sat here today talking to you like this. It's a comfortable position that we revert back to. And there are variations of that. The moment that this becomes a negative body language trait and could be indicative of somebody holding back is timing and when they changed to this. So if you're mid-conversation and everything's going smoothly, you mention something that might require them to reveal certain information. If there's then a change to their posture and their hand positioning, and that would then indicate a potential for trying to conceal information. So hands hidden. This is actually a really interesting one. It goes back to our primal caveman days, back to our instinctive nature. So before we were domesticated and living cute lives, having cup of teas in the morning and cornflakes. I don't even like cornflakes, but back in the day when we had to fend for ourselves and our families, when an enemy approached, the first place we would naturally look is the hands. Are they holding anything that could be of danger to me or my family? Usually not an issue these days, depending where you live, but that's still ingrained within our DNA. So yeah, naturally that's why we look for the hands, and when people conceal them, put them behind their backs, etc., it often implies they're hiding something. Next up, we have pacifying behaviors. Now, pacifying behaviors are the body's way of releasing that emotion when we're in an uncomfortable state. It has to go somewhere. So this is often seen in the form of neck touching, eye rubbing, and self-soothing gestures. The reason that neck touching and anything around the head is a common place to pacify, so you know, when you see people doing this, or they're rubbing their chin, or quite often the nose scratch is another common one. The reason the top half of the body is so common for this is it holds lots of sensitive nerve endings, specifically the vagus nerve, which is in the neck. Now, in context, if you're trying to use these signals to work out if someone is holding something back, then again, it comes back to timing. When did they start pacifying? How serious and intense were the pacifiers? Did they come in clusters? Did they do neck rubbing, straight to the chin rub, straight to the nose? You know, it could be a variety of things, but just time it with what's being said. Was it a moment in the conversation where they were provoked to reveal information and they didn't? Now, these behaviors are actually brought on by the limbic system, which is a specific part of the brain that regulates emotions and things of that nature. And the thing is, it's really hard to stop this kicking in. It's a natural body response. Quick story. So I was in the airport on the way to Lanzarote with my girlfriend, and midway through rushing from Terminal 1 to Terminal 2, I realized I'd left my bag on the transport bus from the car park to the airport. Had my MacBook in, bunch of other stuff. Now, obviously in that moment, I wasn't concerned about regulating my body behavior. I was concerned about how am I going to get this back? The bus is gone. I have a flight that we're already late for. And looking back and even speaking to my girlfriend about how I reacted in that moment. I was pacifying to shit. I was everywhere. I was rubbing the neck. Oh my God, the hands on the head. So yeah, no matter how good you are at spotting and regulating your own body language, it will bleed out in certain situations. There's no avoiding it. Next up, withdrawal and orientation. When people disengage physically, they often also disengage psychologically. If somebody starts orientating themselves away from you whilst talking, it's not necessarily because of you. It's more often than not because they're holding something back. So this often comes in the form of leaning back, obviously, reduced ventral orientation and feet angled away. So the leaning back, just to be clear, they could just be leant back because it's comfy. We all lean back and just chill. But the real question is, when did it change? Were they leaning forwards before and then you said something and then they leant back? Or were they leant back the whole time, but what are their arms doing? If they're in an ejector seat position where they're kind of holding the arms of the chair, that is more of an indication that something is being held back. Reduced ventral orientation. So as mentioned in my other videos, the ventral line is essentially everything going right down the middle. It houses all of our most precious areas, our vital organs, our neck. So when we're in situations of discomfort, i.e. not wanting to share information, when we're holding something back, typically we'll orientate our ventral line away from said threat. Feet angled away, similar principle. The only thing I'd add to that is when we try and deceive people, which we all do to a certain extent, not immorally as such, but if we're trying to portray a certain image of ourselves, we actually just focus on regulating the face because that's where other people look. The feet, they get neglected. No one thinks to regulate that. So if you think someone's holding something back, look at where their feet are pointed. Usually it's towards the exit. I don't know if you guys watch any police interrogations and interviews on YouTube, but if you've seen any of those videos, you'll notice the interviews always start pretty chill. The officers lull them into a false sense of security. So the interviewee is pretty relaxed, but as soon as it gets to the moment that they are presented or confronted to provide information, you see their whole posture change. And often that's when they'll go from like a leant forward position into a leant back. Their bodies will turn towards the door. You get my drift. Wicked. So next one is facial restraint. This comes across in the form of the flat effect. We often tighten or lick our lips, and reduced facial movement as well. When people try to suppress thoughts or emotions, the face becomes controlled. When it's calm, it's loose, but when it's under restraint, it becomes tight. You've probably heard of the fight or flight response, right? Well, there's a third one to that, and it's actually the freeze response. So if you look at nature, deer caught in headlights, another common phrase, they actually freeze, and that's something that we do too as humans. One of the most obvious signals of someone holding back is tightening or licking of the lips. It's not just that. Quite often we refer to it as pursed lips, where they're kind of like, had to do an example there. But what happens is when we're under stress, our mouth actually dries out. So when people are swallowing, licking their lips, kind of moving their tongue around their mouth, that's a signal that something emotional is triggered within them and they're having to deal with that. Boom! Time for the sauce. How to respond. This comes in two parts. Firstly, lower the pressure. So open body language, show your palms, subconsciously builds trust, lower your shoulders, the opposite of turtling. So turtling is where you have raised shoulders. People naturally do this when they're stressed. Lower your shoulders, chill, slow your speech. So match their cadence, adjust your tonality, and actually lower your tone as well. People are more calm when they're listening to a lower tone. And also the mirror principle. Again, don't go over the top with this. It might look creepy, but when we mirror the other person, we copy their body language traits. It builds trust and relatability. And all of this is ultimately just creating psychological safety. Just had to check the door. Thought someone was knocking, but it was a seagull smashing its head in. Now, the next point is to bring it out indirectly. So the key phrase I want you to remember here is plausible liability. So ask questions like, what concerns might somebody else have about this? When people don't feel personally exposed, they're more inclined to share more with you. Your job isn't to extract information, it's to make people feel safe enough to share it. That is it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.